Let's talk about what's happening in Mexico.
Yeah, we have focused a lot, of course, and rightly so, on the stimulus package, what's happening in Washington, D.C., but in reality, there's something happening on our southern border that really does require the attention of the general public and certainly of this administration. Mexico is in the midst of, one might even call it a civil war. It's absolutely incredible what is happening down there. The drug cartels that have for so long controlled such a large portion of the country are now vying for control of various states along the border, the Mexican states along our border, and some American cities, by the way. But the fight has grown, and the federal government has, to their credit, tried to intervene and clean some of this stuff up and has committed federal troops to the task. The Mexican federal government has committed some of their troops to the task of trying to stop the cartels. Turned into a very violent place, of course, where last year, Mike, 6,600 people were killed in this drug violence. 6,600 people. So much so, as a matter of fact, so many people killed in this violence, so uncontrolled, and I mean, it's becoming extraordinarily, I mean, there's violence, and then there's this macabre type of violence with, now everybody's into cutting off the heads of all of the people that they have captured or kidnapped and delivering them to doorsteps surrounding these towns. They just recently, the murder of a Mexican state policeman 2 weeks ago in Chihuahua. They delivered his head to the door of the Mexican police station in an ice chest. But there are literally hundreds of these kinds of incidents have occurred. So many that now Mexican vigilantes are starting to respond. Within the last 24 hours, 21 people have been killed. So far this year, 400 people killed by Mexican vigilantes.
Are the vigilantes the good guys?
Yeah, well, they are. But it also tells you the state of emergency that exists in Mexico and the state of the state in Mexico, which is deteriorating so much that just 2 weeks ago, the U.S. Joint Forces Command in Norfolk, Virginia, warned that Mexico could, quote, does, quote, represent a homeland security problem of immense proportions to the United States. They went on to say that there are two countries in the world where they are on the verge of imminent collapse, Pakistan and Mexico. And if Mexico does collapse, the ramifications for the United States are enormous because what is now just a flood of immigrants coming across that border turns into a tidal.
Well, now we'll have refugees.
Now we will have refugees, and there will be millions of them. And they will seek asylum in the United States, and what are we going to do? The military is actually drawing up plans to deploy troops to our southern border.
The U.S. military,
our military, which they should have done a long time ago, of course, from my point of view. But they're doing it in preparation for what they see as an immense problem, and as they call it, a national security problem.
The deployment of U.S. troops at our southern border would be to keep this wave of refugees out?
Yeah, to deal with it, or at least to contain it so that we can manage it. Because without it, they just come across essentially in waves, just as we're saying.
So would we be building refugee camps to hold them?
That's absolutely part of the plan.
Now you say the U.S. military is drawing up plans. The U.S. military routinely draws up contingency plans for all kinds of things. Obviously, the order to carry this plan out would have to come from the Commander-in-Chief, Barack Obama.
That is correct, and who knows? Who knows? But all I'm saying is that attention needs to be paid to this. Some attention by our government, certainly by the media in the United States. It goes along with the drug problem, of course, that is even a bigger issue, and the degree to which the cartels have now taken over the transportation routes and the distribution routes in the United States. They have over 259 U.S. cities that are now part of the web of the Mexican drug cartels. 259. The whole activity of kidnapping, and it has become a cottage industry all over Mexico. People are being grabbed, taken off the streets for $5,000 because everybody, they know that most, especially Americans down there, can come up with the $5,000. It's now happening in the United States to the extent that Phoenix is now being called the kidnap capital of the United States. The drug cartels are buying into legitimate businesses. They are in the United States. They are then running people for city council positions, mayoral positions. There are cities around Los Angeles, California that have been completely taken over by the Mexican mafia. They have the city council, the mayor, the police chief of these cities. It is not something that we can contain on our border. You know what I mean? It's not, it doesn't stop at the border. It comes across. And certainly the drug activity is part of it, and that's a bigger issue that we should debate.